Hello everyone, Ronnix from Ronnix Photography, and in this tutorial today I'm going to be showing you guys the full retouching process and how you should retouch your images in Photoshop. So this is going to be like a retouching masterclass or a retouching tutorial or a skin retouching tutorial basically from the start to the very end. So basically this is going to be like a long tutorial. So I want to show you guys from the camera adjustments to the skin retouching, then to the global dodging and panning, and to the eye and teeth whitening and the color grading process of retouching your images or your portraits in Photoshop. So when you drag and drop your image into your camera, and if at all that is a raw image or a raw file, it will automatically open your camera raw if at all you have the plugin installed into your Photoshop. So these are the settings right above here. I use the Canon 60 camera to take this camera, and I'm using an older version of camera raw that is 9.9. So as usual, this is my raw image, and the setup I used an 85mm on a Canon 6D camera right here. Then I shot it at f5.6 in order to retain much detail in the model's skin, as you can see right here. Then also I shot it at ISO 320 and at 1 out of 500th of a second. And for my lighting setup, I use the Godox AD600 BM with a waistcoat highlighter right beneath to give me this beautiful catch light in the model's eye. You can see that beautiful catch light. So I'm going to first of all go in with the camera adjustments, because usually this is where I start color grading from. So come to your camera calibration and click it right there. And for newer versions, I think your camera calibration is right embedded in the basic panel, if I'm not mistaken. So click on your camera calibration. Then usually what I prefer to do is to first of all get back the image the way I was looking at it on my camera screen when I was taking the photos on set. So usually your cameras have camera profiles. So there are so many different camera profiles, but since I'm using an older camera raw version, I only have these for my camera. So usually I shoot in camera landscape because I want to get those beautiful, vivid, nice colors for my images. So for whichever picture style you shoot in, you should actually first of all know your picture style or camera profile you shoot in. So me, I shoot in landscape. So when you come to landscape and you click on it, you'll get back your image with most of the colors. So this is basically one of my topmost adjustments for all my images. So I'm going to come back to the basic adjustments and do some little bit of tweaking of this very image. So usually I prefer first of all come and knock down my highlights like that, and I'm going to come to my whites and I knock them down too. The reason for doing this is to get back the skin in its natural way possible. Then I'm going to come to the blacks and also knock them down to add me some little bit of contrast in the image and bring back the colors too. And I'm going to come to the contrast and I'm going to add a little bit of contrast to around 6. Then I'm going to come to the clarity and pump it up to around 6 to bring back more details in the image. Then I'm going to come to my tint. Remember, I shoot with Canon, and Canon usually has so much magenta or reds. So I'm going to come to the tint and I'm going to, so the opposite of magenta is green. So I'm going to try to go towards the green to reduce on the amount of magentas in this very image. So this is the very first step of my retouching process. So I'm going to open the image. So come and click open image to open the photo or the file into your Photoshop. So just come and click open image. So when you click open image, it will take a short while to load, and it is going to open the image finally. So usually my very first step before even retouching most of my images is first of all come and crop my image, because I usually post my images into I post my images in on Instagram. So come to the crop icon. This is your crop tool or your crop icon, and come right down here and look for a ratio of 4 to 5 or 8 to 10 ratio, because when you post these images on Instagram, we want the image to occupy the whole screen of the device of someone who is going to view it. And in this case, it is going to reach so many people, and they're going to view your images when you post them. So come and drag this to crop your image. So just do this. So I just want to get a tighter look for this image. So I think I'm going to crop it from around here, because I am not interested in the model's watch. So click enter or press enter on your keyboard. So this is our image that we are going to be doing the retouching process on. And like I said, we are going to be using frequency separation for the skin retouching, and under frequency separation we're going to be using a mixer brush tool and using the lasso tool method to fine-tune the image even more and get those natural and more realistic skin textures for this very image. So let me first of all define for you guys what frequency separation is. Frequency separation basically is a skin retouching technique that divides the image into two. It divides the image into the colors or the skin tones and the textures. So when you combine the two layers, you have to get back the image initially the way it was. So it gets for us the skin tone so that we can work on the skin tones alone, and we can work with the textures alone on a different layer. So when you combine the two layers, you're going to come again or get back the initial image the way it was before creating your frequency separation group. So let me kick in and I show you guys what I mean by that. So we are going to zoom into this image a little bit. So this is our image. So I'm going to go with a zoom of around 16.7%. So we're going to start by duplicating the background layer twice. Make a copy of the background layer twice. So just drag and drop here to make two copies out of the background layer. And now we're going to rename this color, or some people prefer to call it tones, or other people call it low frequency. So I've decided to put all those so that you don't get confused when I'm trying to explain further. So for a topmost layer, we're going to name it texture, or some people call it the high frequency. So click enter. So the reason for putting these layers in this order is because even on our bodies naturally, the textures are usually all exposed, or they're always protruding out of our skins. So that's why the texture layer is always on top, and the skin tones are just beneath, or the colors are usually beneath the textures on our skins. So first of all, we are going to turn off this texture layer and click to select the low frequency layer. So for this low frequency layer, remember we only want to remain with the colors or the skin tones in the image. So in order to do that, we are going to look for a method of removing the skin tones so that we can remain with the colors or the skin tones in this very low frequency layer. So after making sure it is selected and it is active, come to filter, come to blur, then come to Gaussian blur. So when you come to Gaussian blur, you'll get this box right here. So I'm going to put the radius all the way down, and first of all zoom out like that, or I'm just going to zoom in. So when you zoom in right here, make sure you look for an area that seems to have more skin textures than the rest of the image. So in this way, we are going to remove those most evident skin textures from the model's skin. So, and in order to do that, come to this right here, click and hold down and start to slide or move it like that until we see that we have totally lost out on the textures on that very area. So if I try to move the image around, you can see we can no longer see the textures in this image. So meaning we only have the colors or the skin tones in the image. And when you come to this very image and you look at it, it kind of looks blurry and you can no longer see the skin textures really quite well. So come, and I forgot to tell you, make sure your preview is checked or marked. You have this tick in this box. So click enter or OK like that. So you can see this layer is blurry, so you shouldn't panic or be sad that you can no longer see the image. So come to the texture or high frequency layer, select it, and now click on the eye icon to activate or bring it back and make it visible. So when you select this, remember now for this layer we only want to remain with the textures, and we want to get rid of the colors and the skin tones. And in order to do that, we are going to come right here to image, then come to apply image. So when you do come to apply image, your image is going to kind of darken, and you shouldn't be really shocked when your image turns into this color. So remember, we only want to subtract the textures from the colors. Yeah, I hope I'm making sense. We want to subtract the textures from the low frequency. In order to do that, come and look for that color or skin tones and select that layer. Then come to the blending mode, click. Remember, we are subtracting from this color or skin tone layer. So look for subtract and click on it. So initially or basically, you are going to have these, you're not going to have all these figures, but since I've been using frequency separation for a while now, I had to put in these values, and I'm going to explain them further. So make sure you put your opacity at 100%, and make sure your preview is on or selected or activated. So make sure you put in a scale of 2 and offset 128. So the reason for putting this scale is 2, offset 128, is we want to get a 50% gray for the image. So in order to get the 50% gray, we get all the colors. Remember, the colors in the RGB are 256. So when you divide those colors by 2, when you divide them by 2, you get 128. So 256 divided by 2, you get 128. That's why you have put on these values right here. So come and click OK. So when you do that, your image is going to turn out like this, and you can see right now for this layer we only, I don't know if you can see the textures or the outlines for this very image. You can see, I hope you can see them. So we don't have colors or skin tones for this layer. So after doing that, we have to bring back the image the way it was. So come to normal, click right there and look for linear light. So when you click on linear light, you're going to get back the image the way it was before. So we're going to put these two in a group by selecting them, clicking Ctrl or Command and clicking on both layers. So we are going to first of all drag and drop on this folder like icon to put them in a group, or you can click Ctrl G, like G for girl, or Command G to put them in a group. So we're going to name our group frequency, I'm going to abbreviate that, separation. So when you turn this, like I told you, there shouldn't be a difference between the frequency separation and the original background image. So when you turn this on and off, you can see there is no difference at all between the frequency separation group and the original background image. But when you open this group, you will see that we have two folders that are containing the colors and the textures. So basically, that is how we divide the image using frequency separation, and that is how you create your frequency separation group in Photoshop. So for this first step, we are going now to start blending the unevenness in the skin tones. Remember, we have uneven skin tones, and I know you can't see them quite well, but for this first step we are going to head into is we are going to be using a mixer brush tool in order to blend or even out the skin tones. And in order to see those unevenness in the skin tones, first of all, we are going to come to the adjustments and click on black and white. So when you click on black and white, your image is going to turn into black and white. So right now we still can't see the unevenness in the skin tones or the bumpiness in the skin tones. So come in to the reds, click on this triangular icon and drag towards your left hand side to darken. So you can see when you darken it, you shouldn't take it all the way. Make sure you do it to a reasonable size. So when you do this, you're going to now see the bumpiness. You can see right here we have some kind of bumpiness, and we have some dark parts or patches in the areas that should have been having midtones, and we have some other dark patches in the areas that should have been containing only the highlights. So we are going to try to blend those, and the magic here is we are going to be using a mixer brush tool. Let me rephrase that. We are going to be using a mixer brush tool, not your ordinary brushes, but a mixer brush tool. So remember, the colors and the skin tones are usually on the color all of frequency layer. So come and select that layer, because that is where we are going to be blending the colors or the skin tones for this very image. So click right here, come under the brushes, you can right click and look for mixer brush tool, but mine is out around here. So just right click and look for your mixer brush tool. So this is the mixer brush tool we are going to be using. So here is where you have to pay close attention. Yeah, I need your attention right now. So make sure these are the settings we are going to be using for the mixer brush tool. So let me teach you how to set up your mixer brush tool so that we can blend the skin tones at the same time while retaining the original or natural skin texture in the model's face. So make sure you click right down here and make sure it is a clean brush. First of all, drop down, make sure it is a clean brush. So come right here to this second option that has a brush with a stroke. Make sure you select it. Yeah, make sure you select it. So when you select it, it will actually show you the brush has to clean itself automatically after every stroke we make while we are trying to blend the skin tones together. So make sure you select it. And for the wetness, we don't want our brush to be too wet because it is going to flatten the image or do away with the original skin texture. That's why we need a wetness of around 9 and below, but I prefer 9 because I've always tried and tested this wetness for all my retouching processes. And make sure the load is 75%, the mix is at 90%, and the flow at 100%. So here is another thing. You have to make sure sample all layers is not checked or selected. Yeah, make sure there is no tick in this tiny box of sample all layers. Make sure it is not marked or selected. The reason for that is because we only want to work on this color or tone layer. So we are going to zoom in a little bit by clicking Ctrl plus on the keyboard to zoom into the image like that, and increase the brush size by using the left and the right brackets. So the right bracket increases the brush, and the left bracket reduces or decreases on the size of the brush. So we are going to start blending, and before we can start blending, when you're using a mixer brush tool, always and always make sure you mix the midtones alone, the highlights alone, and the shadows alone, and don't drag from the midtone to the shadows, because you're going to end up flattening or distorting the original shape of the model's face or the image you're trying to do skin retouching on. So you can see we have some kind of shadows right here. I'm just going to blend that. And when you're mixing, make sure you don't over mix a particular area for a long time, because you're going to be doubling the wetness of our brush. So make sure you just come and blend. Make sure you're selected on the color or tones layer and just come and just blend like that. So I'm going to be showing you guys the progress in a bit. So you can see we have the shadows. I'll mix that alone. Yeah, I'll just blend that alone. So we have midtones right here, blend there, come right here and blend like that. Yeah, so you have to blend while you release your brush and let it free, so that you can blend another area. So I'm going to turn off the black and white layer by clicking on the eye icon to hide it. So just see the before after just a few strokes of a brush, and the image already looks amazing, but we are still retaining the original skin textures for the image. So activate the black and white layer by clicking on the eye icon. Make sure you're selected on the color or tones layer, and just continue blending or mixing the transitions within the skin tones like that. So I'm not going to forward anything, because this is like a masterclass for your retouching, and you are going to be a changed retoucher after watching this tutorial. So stay tuned and don't get distracted at all. So let's do this like that. Just blend the shadows alone. So the trick here is you have to blend particular areas alone and don't drag from one area to another. So when you're doing your blending, don't blend the eyebrows or other areas, yeah, like the lips, because when you do blend them, you're going to distort those beautiful makeup, or that beautiful makeup that is on the model's face. So you wouldn't want that. So just come and just continue blending. And when you're doing your blending, make sure you don't totally zoom into your image, because we want to blend this image the way someone is going to be looking at it. So let's come to the chin of the model and just come and do some little bit of blending too, like that. So basically we are looking for those areas that seem to have uneven skin tones, and we're just trying to harmonize or blend those areas together. So let's say progress so far. So this is the image before after. You can see just a few strokes of a brush, and we have already transformed the image from this to this. You can see what it has done to the image. So turn back the black and white layer, and the black and white layer is like our help layer for the retouching process. So you can just double click on the thumbnail, and first of all brighten if at all you feel the area you're going to blend next is kind of too dark. Do that and come and select the tone layer and continue doing the blending on those particular areas like that. So just blend those unevenness in those skin tones in those particular areas. So come and just blend well and nicely, and you shouldn't be in a rush because as a retoucher you need to give your work time, and you shouldn't get distracted, especially when you are watching this tutorial. So let's do this. I'll reduce the brush and just blend. I've seen so many retouchers after blending the face they tend not to work on the other facial structures, yet they are also important, and they contribute so much to the overall image after retouching. So make sure you don't leave any stone unturned. So let's just blend those particular areas. So turn the black and white layer off and see the before after, before after, before after. You can see we have already done a beautiful job for this very image. So we are going to delete the black and white layer by holding it down, click on it and drag it to the trash icon, and come back to select the low frequency layer. So here we are going to fine tune the image even more using the Lasso Tool method. The reason as to why I do combine the two methods is because I want to really get the best out of the two methods of frequency separation. So after blending, remember blending helps us to harmonize the skin tones, and now the Lasso Tool method helps us to refine the image even more. Sorry. So come to the Lasso Tool. This is our Lasso Tool, yeah, and make sure you put a feathering of 23 pixels. So in order to do that, just type in 23 and click enter. Make sure anti-alias is marked or selected, and now we are going to zoom in all the way onto the model's face like this. You can see we already have the skin textures for this image. So when you zoom in, make a selection using a lasso tool, like left click and just draw to make a selection. And when you're doing this, make sure you resist from selecting on the boundaries of the face, because it is going to automatically sample from this and put it on the face. So make sure you remain within the skin area, like you leave some inches onto the border of the skin area. So you shouldn't select other areas, for example the hair or the eyebrows. Then come to filter and come to blur and come back to Gaussian blur. So when you come to Gaussian blur, remember this is what we use, the radius we use when we are removing the skin textures for this image. So when we try to move this towards the right hand side like that, you can see it is refining the image even more. So at around 24 pixels, I think I have a beautiful skin texture for my model. So here I'm going to share with you guys the trick I usually use. So I'm going to put it back to 8 to reset it. So I found out a trick a while back. So I found out that when you multiply the radius you use when you're removing your skin textures, when you multiply it by 3, you get the best skin texture for your images. So in this case 8 by 3 you'll get 24. So I'm just going to delete 8 and just type in 24, and I'm just going to click OK or enter like that. So we are going to apply this effect on the rest of the image to just fine tune or give it you can see the shapes I'm making, the way light is falling onto the image. So right click and click on Gaussian blur to apply the effect. So make a selection like that, right click, click on Gaussian blur. So we're going to continue making this for the rest of the model's face. Right click, click on Gaussian blur, and if at all you feel it is too much, click Shift Ctrl F on the keyboard to reduce on the opacity like that, and click OK. So I'm fine with this opacity for the purposes of this tutorial. Make a selection on the nose area like that. Right click, click on Gaussian Blur. So come right here in the middle of the eyeballs, right click, click on Gaussian Blur. So we are going to zoom in because we want to apply the effect right here above the lip. Right click, click on Gaussian Blur, and come right here, right click, then Gaussian Blur like that. So we're going to do this process for the model's face. I think we are fine with that. So we're going to come right here to the arm and apply the effect to that area, and also come right here, right click, click on Gaussian Blur, and if at all you feel it is too much, for example, for the softer areas, come Shift Control F and turn down or reduce on the opacity of that effect. So basically that is what we are just going to do for the rest of the model's face. Shift Control F, I'm going to go with 45 for that area, and do the rest of the image like that, like this. I think this is fine and beautiful. So you can see the image right now. So this was the image before, after, before, after, before, after. You can see the image is really nice and beautiful. So right now we're going to be removing the pimples or the blemishes. I prefer to remove them after doing my frequency separation. So remember, blemishes are part of the skin texture. So we're going to remove those pimples or the blemishes from the model's face. So select your texture layer and get your clone stamp tool. So zoom into the model's face like this. You can zoom in all the way because we want to eliminate the blemishes completely. So reduce on the size of a clone stamp tool. And how the clone stamp tool works, you sample and paint over the blemish. So you have to look for where the blemish is. So sample from a clean area that doesn't have a blemish by holding down the alternate button and click on a clean area and just paint over the blemish. So alternate, click on a clean area and paint over the blemish. So alternate, click on a clean area next to a blemish and just paint over or dab over the blemish. So that's how the clone stamp tool works when you're trying to remove pimples or blemishes from the model's face during your retouching process. So we are going to take some time while cleaning up the skin. Remember, blemish removal contributes over 60% to your overall skin retouching process. So you shouldn't be in a hurry while trying to remove the blemishes, because we wouldn't want to miss out or distort the image by being in a hurry while we are trying to remove the pimples or the blemishes from the model's face. So let's do that for the rest of the model's face like that. So right click. You can use various methods for removing blemishes, but I prefer to use the clone stamp tool because it really helps me sample by myself while cleaning up the image. So that is the blemish removal part. So let me continue doing this for the rest of the image or the model's face like that. So I'm just basically cleaning up or removing those pimples or blemishes from the model's face or the model's skin. So I'm going to try to eliminate the model's smile line like that. So let me also clean up the neck area of our model. So basically we are just trying to do a little bit of cleaning up onto the model's face or the model's skin. So let's just clean up there. So I think we are done with removing the pimples or the blemishes from the model's face. So this is the before and after, before after, for removing those pimples or blemishes from the model's face or the model's skin. And right now I'm going to be showing you guys how to do or bring back the beautiful shapes or dimensions in the model's face. And for this case, we are going to be using global dodging and burning. And remember, global dodging and burning, we are going to use global dodging and burning to also brighten up this area of the model's chest. And when using global dodging and burning, we are going to be using curves to brighten up or darken up the areas we feel should have been brightened or darkened, and bring back the shape or the dimension that we may have lost out while we are doing the frequency separation. So come to the adjustments and create a curves adjustment layer. Make a midpoint and drag all the way up. First of all, to brighten, you shouldn't take it all the way up. So make sure the mask is selected, then click Ctrl I or Command I on the keyboard. So remember, when we are brightening, will be dodging. Yeah. So I'm going to name that dodge. And when we are darkening, will be burning. So come back to the curves and make a second one. But this time around, take it down to the opposite, darken it a little bit. Make sure the mask is selected, click Ctrl I or Command I and name this burn. So when you name it burn, you're going to put the two in a group by clicking Ctrl or Command G on the keyboard. So I'm going to name this D and B, that is for dodge and burn. So open the dodge and burn group. Remember, select this, and remember what we did for our frequency separation. We created a black and white adjustment layer. So we're going to come back and create black and white adjustment layer and darken it a little bit. So we want to see initially where the shadows and the highlights were for this very image. So come to your brush, make sure you select your brush tool, make sure the opacity is at 9% and the flow at 100%. So when you do that, come to the dodge tool, select the black mask. Make sure the black mask is selected. Make sure the black mask is selected, and when you select it and you have your brush tool, we are going to be brightening the areas we feel should have been bright when we were doing the frequency separation. So in order to see that, turn off the frequency separation group like that, and now get your brush tool, opacity 9%, the flow 100, and you're going to be brightening those areas. So this is it. Start painting over those areas. So before you start painting, make sure you have white is on top of black. So in order to reset the colors, click on these two boxes right here. So you can see when you toggle by clicking the arrows, you get white on top. So we're going to start painting on using a white brush in order to brighten specific areas like that. So I'm going to come to the nose area and I'm going to just highlight that area too. I think that is fine for. I'm just going to put back the frequency separation group and deactivate the black and white layer. So I'm just going to get the brush tool and I'm just going to come and paint over the areas I feel should look a little bit brighter. So I'm basically using dodging and burning to brighten up these particular areas on the model skin like that. So I hope you guys can see the difference it is just making. I think this is fine. So let's see a before and after. So before, after, before, after. I've just used dodging and burning to just brighten up those areas. So this time around I'm going to burn, turn off the frequency separation group and turn back the black and white layer on. Make sure you're on your black mask, it is selected, and just continue bringing shape or dimension onto the model's face by just painting over those areas like that. So I'm going to come to the cheekbone, and I'm just going to do that. And if at all you missed out on a particular area, come back to the dodge and just enhance that particular area, like by just painting there. So we are going to activate your frequency separation and delete the black and white layer or help layer. So this is the before after. You can see the difference dodging and burning really makes to the image. So right now we're going to be first of all fixing this area so that it can match with the face of the model, because it kind of looks dark. So we are going to create a stamp visible layer for all we have done so far by clicking Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard to create a stamp visible layer. And now click Control or Command J on the keyboard to duplicate it. Then get our quick selection tool, and first of all drag towards the right to make a selection of that dark area. And if at all you feel you want to delete or deselect a particular area, hold down the alternate button, and when you hold down the alternate button, the plus icon in the quick selection tool is going to turn into minus, and just paint over the area you want to deselect. So I think this selection is really fine enough. So I'm going to kind of deselect these fingers too, yeah, because I only want to work around with a model's skin. So come to our color balance. So come right here, click on color balance, and now we're going to try to blend or match this area with the model's face. So first of all, I want to warm it up a little bit to around that we are working with the midtones, remember. And now we're going to add a little bit of reds to that particular area, and we are also going to add some little bit of magentas to around -1. So I think this looks really fine for me. So this was the before after. So what we are going to do right now, we are going to be doing a little bit of more of the color grading process for this very image. So we're going to create another stamp visible layer by clicking Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard to create that stamp visible layer, and duplicating the background that very layer by clicking Control or Command J on the keyboard to create a copy, or you can just drag and drop on this icon to create a copy. So in order to do that, we're going to now start color grading the image. So come right here and click on selective color. So selective color, you have to work with different colors individually to do your color grading. So first of all, I want to play around with the blacks for this image. So click on blacks, and I want to add blacks to the image. So when you turn this all the way, you can see you add blacks to the image. So I'm not going to do that or take it overboard. I'm going to go around with around 5, and now come to the yellows, because I want to add that kind of cinematic feel to the image. So I'm going to turn the yellows to around -8. I think this is fine for me. So depending on your liking, but I think this is fine for me. And now I'm going to close that, and I'm going to come to the brightness and contrast like that, and I'm going to activate use legacy, and I'm going to just add in a little bit of contrast to around 2. Yeah, 2 will do for me. So I think this is fine with the color grading for this very image. And right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to be doing a little bit of eye whitening for this very model. And in order to do that, I'm going first of all create another stamp visible layer for our model by clicking Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard, and duplicate that layer by clicking Control or Command J. And now come to filter and come to camera raw filter. So when you come to camera raw filter, we're going to be using the adjustment brush, to whiten the eyes of our model. So get your zoom tool. Yeah, this is the zoom tool, and zoom into the eyes you want to whiten like that. So click on your adjustment brush tool. I don't know if these are still here, but I think for newer versions they are on your right hand side. So this is the adjustment brush tool. So make sure the temperature is at around -29 or towards the blue side, because we want to remove the yellowness from the eyes, and in order to remove them you have to move the temperature slider towards the blue side, and make sure the highlights is at 2 because we want to brighten up the eyes a little bit. I think we can go around with around 4, and the whites at 4 to brighten up the eyes. Then make sure saturation is -74 because we are removing colors from the white area of the model's eye. So when you do these settings, and when you're trying to set up your adjustment brush tool, when you put these settings, you put them once and for all. So every time you open up your adjustment brush tool, all these settings are going to be embedded already. So you set these up once and for all. So just come and paint over the white area. Remember, we are only painting over the white area. So when you paint over the skin, it is going to desaturate or remove color from the model's skin. So just make sure you paint over on the area you feel should have been white. Remember, we have this little corner in our eyes that contains some reds, so you shouldn't paint it because the eyes are not going to be looking unnatural at all. So you can see this actually also leaves some veins in the model's eyes. So I think this is one of the most natural ways of whitening eyes. So when I zoom out, you can see how the eyes have turned out to be, or how they have turned out to look. So I'm going to come back right here, and now I feel the image is kinda really warm. I'm going to turn down the temperatures of the overall image to around negative. I'm going to go with around -6. I think -6 is okay for me for this very image. I think I've gone too much. I'm going to go with around -4 and click OK on the keyboard. So I'm also going to remove these tiny spots in the hair by using the spot healing brush tool. Come and just dab over them. So get your spot healing brush tool and just click over those tiny white parts, and it is the same tool you can use for removing pimples or blemishes from the model's skin. So I think this is fine for this very image. So I'll show you guys the before and after for this overall image. So when you hold down the alternate button and click on your background layer, or this the eye icon on the background layer, hold down alternate button and click on that, you can see that was the image initially before and after, before, after, before, after. So this has been a tutorial about the in-depth skin retouching this has been an in-depth skin retouching tutorial. And what we did frequency separation using the mixer brush tool. First of all, blend the skin tones. Then we also went ahead to do global dodging and burning to bring back shape or dimension to the image. Then we also color graded the image, and we also brightened up the chest area and matched the color of the face to the neck area of the model. Then we also color graded the overall image, and we also did the eye whitening for the image. So this was the image before, after, before, after, before, and after. So if at all you love this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to hit the like button on this video, and don't forget to give me feedback in the comment section. I'm Ronnix from Ronnix Photography. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best. If at all this tutorial is going to change your photography or retouching game in general. I'm Ronnix from Ronnix Photography, and keep creating.